Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabetch Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabetch Bachman.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabetch Bachman, your host for Speakers Who Get Results, and I've got a question for you. Have you ever seen a boring speaker? Or for that matter, have you ever seen a speaker who's so excited about what they do that they go on and on and on and tell you way more about their company or their project than you really want to know? Or maybe even a speaker who goes off on a tangent and completely loses the thread of where they're trying to go. Now, here's another question. Have you ever been that speaker? I think we all have from time to time. And my hope today is to talk to you about what I do to help your content go from boring to bravo. The problem is that we've all seen presentations that are full of data. You've got graphs, you've got figures, you've got information. We've all do that, and it's really important. But if you're the person who has to give that data, and especially if you have to get a result, if you had to get your listeners to do something, how can you keep your data interesting? How can you keep them engaged? For instance, you might be making a presentation on behalf of your company or yourself, making a sales presentation, and the result you need is to get them to buy, get them to ask for help. If you're great, they're going to say yes. But if you're not interesting enough, if you're not compelling enough, then your listeners will tune out or they'll go to your competitors and get the service from the competitors. Or you might be presenting within your company. Maybe you're presenting to upper management and you need them to approve what you want your team wants to do. Maybe you're giving a report to the board. They desperately need to be interested, and they're not going to expect you to be interesting at first. If it's a lot of data, a lot of content, they're going to expect to be bored. The key is if you can be the person who's interesting and give them the information, they're going to remember you forever. This also works with your team. If you're presenting to your team, maybe you're doing an update on a project that they know about, you have to battle the I already know that trap, which is a natural thing for people to fall into. Again, you need to be interesting. My intention for today is to show you, one, how you can avoid drowning people in data. Secondly, how to keep them interested and how to keep yourself on track, not going off on tangents. And three, how to be the speaker everybody wants to follow. Now, I recommend that you get a pen and paper if you can, if you're not driving while you're listening to this, get a pen and paper and write these down, because I'm going to be sharing you secrets that have saved me thousands of dollars and frankly, cost me thousands of dollars when I forgot to do them. The first big trap that people fall into is giving too much how, not enough why. Write that down. Too much how, not enough why. This is important because what people forget about is they give all the details of the how, of the what, without telling people why it matters to them. And that, of course, is the key. Everybody automatically, it's a human thing, automatically people are going to say, why should I care? Why does it matter? That's especially also if you're presenting to people who already know something about this and you're giving them an update. It's, why should I pay attention? I already know this. So the key is, it's for them. I always say that's the number one rule in presenting any kind of presentation is it's all about the audience. Make sure that they know why it's going to matter for them. Now, you may have heard this at any speech that you're doing where you need to get a result, you need to move your listeners to take action. That is a sales speech. And one of the first rules of sales is sell the benefits, not the features. As the old saying goes, sell the sizzle, not the steak. That works in presentations, especially if you have a lot of data, if you have a lot of content. As you're giving your content, break it down into lists so that people can understand lists. Bullet points are great. Break it down into what are the key things they need to know. If they need to know specifics and there are all sorts of little details, you can deal with that in a question and answer period. But to get their attention, to get them to pay attention, let them know why it's going to benefit them. Give them the why. If you think about it, have you ever walked out of a presentation thinking, wow, that was really interesting? And then gone to your friends and your colleagues and said, hey, I learned something really cool today. That's the kind of impression you want to make. It's a little different for every single person, and the kind of data you give, the details are different, but the general principle is the same. Let people know how it benefits them. Even if you've said it before, you can at least remind them how it benefits them. My client, Greg, is a specialist in employment law. He loves the law. He loves figuring out all the details of the changes in the law, but he's an introvert. He really hates speaking. He really likes the details better. So when his company said, you're going to be the one who goes out and tells our clients what are the changes that they need to pay attention to, he panicked. And he called me up and he said, help, I don't want to go out and do that. And I know they don't want to be there. How can I make it interesting? So we used this principle. We made sure that for every point he made, he followed it up right. Here's why this matters to you. Here's what you can get out of this. Or here's the problem that you can avoid. The more he did it, he'd had to do several of them. The more he did it, the easier it got. And then he called me up after this series of presentations and he said, wow, I'm not afraid to go out there and do that anymore. Even better, the company now wants me to take this speech and talk to prospects. They want me to go and recruit. But then he wasn't sure what to do that. So we went over the speech. And because we'd taken the time to make his first presentation interesting and good, all we had to do was tweak it a little bit so that it became a recruitment speech. He actually got new clients and he's now on the track for promotion. The second big problem that people have is going off on tangents. Have you ever sat through a presentation and the speaker suddenly went off on a track and started telling you about something that had nothing to do with the point? This is especially if you've actually gone to learn something and they're not talking about that at all. That's annoying. It wastes people's time. And it's a really easy trap to fall into. We all do it, especially if you like telling stories with your friends and you have these conversational tracks, these stories that you've told over and over. It's really easy to get kind of caught in the beginning of a story and then you go on and on. The key is, if you've done that, especially if it's a presentation, if it's a business presentation, if they'd understand why it matters, and then you go off talking about something else entirely, you've wasted their time, you've wasted your time. Here's how to fix it. Think about writing your speech from the end, start at the end and work backwards. Reverse engineer it, if you will. All too often, you see a speaker who starts and they just start and they just go until they're done, rather than thinking, what's the thing you're going to ask them to do? What's your call to action? If you're presenting to sell, The action is talk to me about using our services, talk to me about hiring us. Or if you're talking to your team, you're talking to, let's go off and do this. If you're talking to upper management, it's please approve this. So here's what it is. Here's why it will benefit you. Please approve this. Things like that. If you start with what you want them to do and then work backwards, then make sure that all your points lead to that call of action. This is a standard practice in sales speeches, but not necessarily internal presentations, not necessarily presentations where you're giving information. And I believe that it does matter. One of the images I like is, think about the difference between a stopwatch and a countdown timer, like a kitchen timer. A stopwatch, you start the stopwatch and it just goes until you stop. It can be as long as you want. A countdown timer says, okay, you have 10 minutes for this. So you know how much you have to do in 10 minutes and you know when you have to finish. That's the way to keep yourself on track. Always make sure that your call to action and your best point that leads to a call to action is the one that you leave time for. And then work backwards. Time yourself. You know how long it's going to take. You know how much time you have. There are lots of ways of managing the time, and I'm going to be doing another presentation all about that. But think about it as a countdown. My client, Sally, had a speech to give. Now, she is the CEO of a small manufacturing company. They do have a niche in manufacturing, and she's one of the few women who has that presentation. And Sandy's really fun to watch. She's very excited. She's one of those speakers who gets so passionate about what she does that she goes off on tangents. And when she does that in a sales presentation, she often runs out of time to actually ask for the sale. So she asked me for help. She had signed up to be part of a speech at a conference. And she said, all right, I've got to get this right. I only have 6 minutes, so help. I can't be concise. Help me do this. We reverse engineered her speech, and we got a nice, polished, interesting speech that gave the key information and would hopefully make people say, wow, I want to know more about this company. Then the night before, I checked in with her, and she said, I've thought about it all day, and I've added a whole bunch of extra stuff. She showed me the script, and she'd added extra details, other stories, things that had nothing to do. And she'd probably given herself 20 minutes worth of material for a 6-minute speaking slot. And as I talked to her, I realized that she suddenly thought, goodness, they're not going to take me seriously, especially in a woman in a male-dominated business. I'm going to have to give them more details to show them I know what I'm talking about. This is actually pretty common. Happens to a lot of people, men and women. At the last minute, they look out at the audience and they think, ooh, I have to show them that I know what I'm talking about. And they go off on some tangent and the whole flow is ruined. Fortunately, I was able to catch Sally in time and get her to trust her material. I said, remember, we practiced this. We worked on this. We know how long it's going to take. Trust that you're okay. We'd added enough things in there so that people knew she knew what she was talking about. Just trust. And she called me up afterwards and she said, I did it. I managed to get in within 6 minutes. They loved it. And best of all, 3 different companies came up to me and said, wow, this is interesting. I didn't realize that you did this service. Let's talk. The third point, and this is what the other 2 are building up to, is use stories and metaphors. People respond better to stories than they do to facts. People remember stories better than they remember facts. If your material is complicated, You can mix stories in, mix images in. If you can tell a story, like I just did with Sandy, and demonstrate why it matters, especially why it'll matter to them, or a story that they can relate to, that's a good way to do it. You can also, if you're talking to people who think they already know this, you can say, here's this new thing. You can think of it as a countdown timer versus a stopwatch. That was a metaphor that I used to give you the idea of the concept. And it put the image of a kitchen timer, I hope, in your mind, so that you remember, yes, kitchen timer, not stopwatch. If people already do know this, then you can always say, you can explain it to your clients as. So if you're telling people how to use a new piece of equipment, they understand it. Use that to help them. You can give them the story that they can then pass on, and they'll remember it. Now, I've had a lot of people say, yeah, but my clients, the people I talk to, they're all engineers, or they're specialists, or they're technical experts. They only relate to facts. They're not going to relate to stories. Well, as long as they're human beings, they learned as children from stories. We all grew up hearing stories from our parents, reading stories, watching stories. You see it all over the internet now. Stories and metaphors can help you understand something. Even if they love the facts, mix a story in there, either before or after, and that can help you. That can help people grasp it and keep it in their mind. It's the hook that fits the memory, so that people can remember what it is you're looking for and remember what it is you're talking about. Stories are what people will tell later. With Sally and her manufacturing story, she knew she was speaking to a mixed audience, some of whom were manufacturing professionals and some of whom were not in her department. So she had to explain what she did. Here's the key: mix data and metaphors. You can use the jargon, use the technical terms so that people know you know what you're talking about, and then say, you can think of it as, or you can, explain it to your clients as. You do a mix and it will stay in people's minds better. For Sally, she was talking about, she used an example of a strainer basket in a refinery that her company had improved. Now, in the process of refining oil, the strainer basket strains out the unwanted solid waste so that the liquid goes through the pipes. Kind of works like the hair trap in your shower. She said, I can't talk about a shower drain. I said, just try it, see what happens. And sure enough, the image of the hair trap in the shower drain, strains out that icky stuff. But that was what people remembered. And one of the reps from one of the big companies that wound up hiring her came up and he said, I love the shower story. I'm going to use that always. So just find an image, an evocative image that will make the difference and will show people, that will help people remember. Also remember that when you are the speaker, you automatically have credibility and authority. If you're boring, if you drone on and on, or if you talk too fast that no one can understand you, if you talk too fast, that's what people will remember. If you're interesting, compelling, and give people a hook and a memory that they can use, that will make them go, bravo. So remember, include the benefits, what's in it for them. Make sure that you reverse engineer your speech so that you do a countdown, you know how long you're going to take, and make sure that the end is what's important, because that's what people remember, beginnings and endings. And use a mix of stories and metaphors to help people understand. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And if you'd like to learn more, take our free assessment at www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com. It's a 4-minute assessment that can give you an idea of where your presentation skills are strong, where maybe you might need a little support. If this was helpful, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends, go to iTunes and leave us a review, spread the word. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, and I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.